Good morning, I said. I'm a bit nervous because standing among all these distinguished scholars, I don't know what is in store for me. Well, actually, I'm presenting this. This study is based on some work which we did some time back, and my name is Asoka Jayasena. I was a former professor of education at the University of Peradeniya, and currently I am a professor at Walden University and is a faculty member of the institute. And my colleague is Professor Bonnie Nastasi. She is a professor of psychology at Tulane University. The title of my paper is Perceptions of Parents and School Personnel about Socio-Cultural Factors that Influence the Psychosocial Well-Being of the Young. I would like to first of all, define what is meant by psychological well-being, how we look at this concept in this paper. It is defined as working towards their full emotional, intellectual, and behavioral potential, adaptively coping with their daily stresses, being positive members and contributors of their communities. And you may wonder why we want to study this psychological well-being about students in Sri Lanka. Now, I don't think most of you are aware that we have a mental health problem in Sri Lanka. We do have, and those statistics or the information that is given in that slide would indicate to you what is the current status in Sri Lanka. Because recently we have had so many mental health cases where the children have been thrown into the sea, most mothers, and thrown into the river, or they jump with the children, they push the children down hillsides. Like that, we have been having so many problems recently. So mental health, that says something about the mental health status of Sri Lanka right now. Actually, Sri Lanka has always boasted of a very high educational standard. We have one of the highest literacy rates in Southeast Asia. But yet, I am not saying that we have a perfect education system. We do have an education system which focuses more on academic achievement. And two aspects come out in this education system. One is the lack of attention paid to the mental health status of all those clients in the education system, including not only the students, but the teachers as well. And then we have another problem where our education system has resulted in so many educated people who are currently finding it difficult to find employment. So these are two acute problems in our system. Actually, the latter one, the lack of employment, has cost many young lives during the past few years from 1971, because we have had a lot of two insurrections and then various other problems constantly, strikes and demonstrations and closure down of academic institutions and so many other things. Then this other thing about psychological well-being, we have been trying from 1961 to introduce the counseling system to our education system. But we have, I would say as educationists, we have miserably failed. Because people really do not want to admit that we have mental health issues. Because in Sri Lanka, it is a stigma. It is a stigma to say that you are a mental health patient. So this is where we stand right now. So, but anyway, it came into focus after the tsunami catastrophe in 2004, and there were so many cases of mental health issues that we were confronted with. Then only some of our educationists, as well as sociologists, as well as psychologists, opened up their eyes to realize that we need. It was actually before this issue came up, my colleague and myself, with a few other academics from Peradeniya, started this mental health program. Now, the objective of this study is to identify the factors that influence the psychological well-being of the adolescents and the youth from the point of view of the parents, and identify the factors that influence the psychological well-being of the adolescents and the youth from the point of view of the teachers and administrators. You may ask me why we didn't look at it from the point of view of the student. We did, but I am not presenting that data in this paper. I am focusing more on the parents and the administrator. Now, we used the theoretical model which we developed on our own, which suited Sri Lanka, and this is the model. And this we have used in several studies, and this has been very effective. Now, why did we select schools? Because we have a belief with the work that we did that the schools are the most suitable context to study the psychosocial well-being of the adolescents and youth. Internationally, the school has been identified as the ideal site for addressing the social, emotional, and behavioral concerns caused by social ills faced by children. That is, we are catching them young, I would say. The emphasis is that psychological needs of children can be served within the school context. Now, these are the research questions. The central research question that we asked them was, what are the factors that influence the psychosocial well-being of the adolescent? And we had a number of sub-questions. As parents, do you feel that your children have psychosocial problems? According to your understanding, what are the factors that contribute to any turmoil which would affect the psychosocial well-being of your children? Can you suggest any immediate remedial measures which will contribute to improve the status of psychosocial well-being of your children? At this point, I am sure most of you would raise the question saying that the parents are not educated enough to find solutions or suggest solutions. But we did find that they were capable in their own context. They understand their own context much better than us. Then we turn to the administrators and the teachers. As a teacher, administrator, can you indicate any factors that harm the psychosocial well-being of the students under your care? Can you suggest ways and means as a teacher administrator that could provide an atmosphere which would be better for the psychosocial well-being of the students? Now, the purpose of the study was to identify the problems faced by them and to understand the factors that contribute to the situation. Of course, the next stage was to suggest remedial measures, but most of the remedial measures that we could suggest are beyond our control. Now, this is where we conducted this study. It is a fishing village on western coast of Sri Lanka. I would name the village. Most of the residents involved were fishermen. This particular school was one of the poorest schools in that particular education circuit, and it was a school started by a Catholic society 100 years ago, but the school was taken over by the Sri Lankan government under when they tried to establish a state system in 1961. Now, the enrollment in the school is 320 students from grades 1 to 11, and in grades 6 to 10, we have 168 students. That enrollment itself, statistics would tell you what type of a rural school it is, and people from Sri Lanka would understand that the context better, because I don't think our visitors here would know what kind of situation could exist in a school with such a low enrollment. And the other interesting feature in this school was most of the students and families are Catholics, and they attended church administered by a Catholic priest who teaches at the school. This was a very influential factor. This Catholic priest was the live wire of the school. But this particular school, though it is located almost on the sea lake, it sustained minimal tsunami damage, no loss of life, but lot of fishing boats were destroyed. It is a type 2 provincial school serving grades 6 to 10 and a teaching staff of 20. Student population was, as I indicated, over 300. Majority of the students came from impoverished socio-economic background, fisher families, subsistence, and they had very small profits. Parents had minimal education, and they do not have counselors or a comprehensive school-wide mental health system in place for its students. Now, the data in this paper is from the parents of those students whom we interviewed in 6 5-focus groups, and the 12 teachers, staff, including 3 administrators, 3 principal, vice principal, and the Catholic priest, we interviewed personally, person to person. Rest of the other teachers were taken as a one focus group. Data collection strategies, focus group interviews, 69 parents of students in grades 6 to 10, and 12 teachers, and semi-structured individual and group interviews followed. This is the composition of the parents' focus groups. Data analysis, all data including students' focus group interviews were transcribed and coded in keeping with the qualitative research methods. Data that emerged from parents and teachers' focus group categorized under 3 main themes, that is, challenges the parents faced in establishing psychosocial well-being of their children, and the challenges that teachers faced. But these 2 were discussed in reference to the socio-cultural context. The themes that emerge from the parents is that 5 items emerge. One is the generation gap. The second one is the technological advancement and the influence of other cultures, lack of time and attention from the parents, their poverty, and the influence of media. Now, I'll explain each of these. How much time have I got?
You just have around 5 minutes.
Okay. I will show the views expressed by the school personnel and go back to the... Now, the generation gap. These parents were of the opinion that there exists a huge generation gap between the children and themselves. This is mostly because they felt that the parents cannot cope with the views, attitudes, values of their children due to the other influences like technological advancement and also their lack of time and attention. Because, this is a place where there is the influence of tourism is felt immensely. And the children are always exposed to this good culture as well as hippie culture, I would call it. So it is not really a very good influence on the growing children. So because of this, they are making very high demands on their parents, like, they want to dress like the tourists, they want to have all these new technological gadgets, I would call it, but the parents can't afford it because most of the parents are away. Most of the time away in the fish wardias, that is, about another 200, 300 kilometers away. They go there for 2 to 3 months, leave the children in the care of the parents or some other person, a caretaker. and they don't have, this is mostly because of their poverty. They are struggling to make ends meet, but the children don't understand this situation. So they are actually faced with a conflict, you see. So but the parents have no other alternative. They have to go, because otherwise they can't even provide them their basic needs like bread and butter. So they have to go. But they are leaving the children, most of them were leaving the children with their grandparents who were themselves old. They needed care from somebody else. So how can they take care of these young children? It was an impossible task. Then there are poverty. They have now, most of the people who are working in the area itself, the fishermen, they work for the big mudalalis. And they get only a quota of the fish they catch. Once they sell it and bring that income, that is just sufficient for them to find the day's needs. How can they provide all these requirements that the children? Then in addition, we have this influence of media, which is actually not a very good thing for the children, because, they have access to internet and all these things. Some of us might think that this is all doing very good for us, but it is not. If you really look into the matter, you will see that the media is not a very good influence, especially on this particular class of children, who do not have educated parents, who couldn't identify what is good and bad for them. So this is the situation. Then we go to the school personnel. Now the teachers were saying the children are not motivated enough, fair enough, because the children don't have the books and the other requirements to learn. And they don't see an end in view, because they have no future in education. That is their feeling. They have no future. They know they will end up. When we questioned them, they said, why should we study? All these arts, most of these arts and science graduates are jobless in Sri Lanka. Where are we going to fit in? So fair question, you see, because that is a big issue. Then the teachers, on the other hand, felt that their teacher efforts are not rewarded. But this was contradicted by the parents. The parents said, the teachers, though they say they are putting in their best effort, are not doing their best. And the Catholic priest also agreed with that. And the parents also cannot help the children in their studies. So, in addition, we have an outdated curriculum in Sri Lanka, which we have been trying to reform, but we haven't been successful in that. So my conclusions are these: many challenges and major socialization challenges in motivating students for studies due to conflicting interests. Then teachers are frustrated, on the other hand, as their efforts are not rewarded. Influence of media threatening traditional cultural values. Poverty of the parents, which prevents providing adequate care and protection. And tourism, though our politicians say is bringing in massive income, I don't look at it that way. Then the recommendations are, we have to establish a larger network for greater collaboration between teachers and parents, because there's a big distance between these two groups. Intervention of the state sector to reduce poverty, and establishment of a counseling service, probably with the help of religious leadership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I think a round of applause in appreciation for her presentation. I think this will lead to a lot of lunchtime conversations. We'll have the Q&A session there, or I think, would you like to take one question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, can you give the mic, please?
I would like to make a comment on the very last point that you just mentioned. Counseling in the religious context, or in as you just mentioned, I also agree with you. We have failed the counseling for school children. I think why we failed is we have the people who call themselves counselors are not trained. they don't have the correct attitude, and in class, in the school context, they don't have resources like a confidential room, and also because we work in a stigmatized environment, counseling teacher share the same stigma of a psychiatrist or a psychologist, because people think, he's a mad, so the going to that room become a stigma. With this appreciating all these things, I believe if we get this counseling for kids, most of our kids do attend Dhamma schools or Sunday schools. In that context, I think that will reduce the negative impact, stigma, and also that will access parents. I also believe interventions for children's well-being has to be with parents. So therefore, I think I really agree with you, the very last statement that you, in your PowerPoint under conclusion. That's my experience, and I have discussed this thing, and actually I was going to start counseling clinics, like we had dental clinics. I think all our teeth is okay, even in remote villages, but I think we have issue of the mind and counseling.
Thank you very much.
I would add to that, the whole problem in Sri Lanka is counseling is not understood in the proper context. Our educationists don't realize the value of counseling in schools. Actually, you will be surprised to hear where I did my PhD study, my research side. There was a counselor who happened to be a student of mine in the university. And she was trained in counseling, but this is one of the largest girls' schools in Kandy. And this counselor was working as the librarian. I was quite shocked, but that is the situation. But I don't think that this was sometime, almost 30, 35 years back I am talking. But I don't think the situation has changed much since then even.
Yeah.